The air in the lawyer's office smelled like carpet cleaner and stale paper, the kind of scent that doesn't belong to any one thing, but clings to everything. I sat at the end of the long mahogany table, alone on one side. Across from me, my two brothers, Matthew and Colin, flanked by their wives, my Aunt Margaret, a cousin I hadn't seen in 10 years. They avoided my eyes. All of them. It didn't matter. I wasn't looking for comfort, just confirmation. The lawyer, a thin man with tired glasses and a too smooth voice, cleared his throat. He read the will, my father's voice, written in legal phrases. Final, cold, to my sons, Matthew and Colin. I leave the estate, including the house, stocks, and business assets, to Margaret, my sister, a portion of the trust. To my daughter, there was a pause. He looked at me. Just for a second. I leave nothing. That was it. 4 words. I leave nothing. The room stayed quiet. No gasps, no outrage, not even a surprise. Just the soft sound of a document being folded, and the rustling of bags being picked up. Matthew didn't look at me as he stood. Colin offered a shrug, as if to say, "That's how it is, desai." They all left in under 5 minutes. No one said my name. Outside, the sky was clear, sharp blue. I remember thinking it looked too perfect, like even the weather was indifferent. I didn't cry. Not then, not on the train home, not that night. I just sat on the floor of my apartment, legs crossed, palms flat against the hardwood, and stared at the wall until the sun went down. My father had been sick for almost a year. I had called, written, offered a visit. He'd never responded. I had known deep down I wouldn't be included, but knowing doesn't soften the blow. It just helps you brace. And now, I have been erased. Not just forgotten, erased. Growing up, I was the quiet one. Not weak, just not loud. Matthew was the golden child. Colin, the charming screw-up. Me, I was the one who kept journals instead of secrets. The one who didn't shout back, even when shouted at. I wasn't a rebel. I was the reminder that something different was possible. My father hated that. He used to say I thought I was better than the rest of them, but I never did. I just didn't want to live in their world of loud dinners and louder opinions, where emotion was weakness and women were meant to orbit men. When I chose art school instead of law, he told me I was wasting his name when I moved out at 19 and never asked for help again. He stopped calling. I wasn't surprised when the visits stopped, but I never thought he'd go so far as to pretend I didn't exist in the end. People talk about money like it's cold, but being left out of the will wasn't about money. Not really. It was about meaning. It was about being told, you were never part of us, not even in the way we count our legacy. It was about being made invisible. A week later, I boxed up the few photographs I had left of him, not to destroy them, just to put them away. He had made his decision, and now I would make mine, not to win, not to show him, but to become undeniable. If they had written me out of their story, I would write my own. It started in a cramped studio apartment with peeling paint and a window that barely opened. That's where I lived after the will was read. That's where I sat, nights stretched into mornings, fingers stained with ink or tapping at a worn keyboard, trying to make sense of my life again. I had nothing by most people's standards. No savings, no inheritance, no name that meant anything anymore. But I had time, I was silent, and I had a question no one else seemed to ask. What if being left out is freedom? I worked temp jobs, receptionist, proofreader, barista, paid in hours, not in worth. I saved what I could. I stopped going to family events. Not that they invited me, but I stopped checking. I had no one to impress, no audience to perform for. And in that absence, I found a kind of clarity. I spent 2 years building something no one else could see. It began with a blog, then a digital sketchbook. Late nights turned into experiments. I taught myself everything I didn't know: UI, branding, marketing, how to code just enough not to break things. I noticed patterns in the chaos. People didn't just want pretty things. They wanted things that made them feel seen. So I designed that. Quiet tools for quiet people, digital planners for those who felt overwhelmed by noise, mood boards that didn't ask for perfection, a subscription model that ran on generosity, not scarcity. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, and for a long time, no one noticed. But traffic grew, slowly, steadily, like moss over stone. The first big break came from a stranger in another country. She posted one of my templates on her social feed. "Feels like it was made by someone who understands my brain," she wrote. She had 200,000 followers. I didn't even know her name. In one weekend, my site crashed twice. I had more orders than I could fulfill. I didn't sleep for 3 days. It was terrifying. It was thrilling. And it was mine. From there, I scaled up, hired 2 freelancers, opened a tiny LLC, did all the paperwork my father used to say I wasn't wired for. He would have hated everything about it: the color palettes, the softness, the emphasis on feelings. But it worked, because I wasn't trying to compete with his world. I was building a different one. By the third year, my digital product business had over 400,000 users, not just customers, people, students, mothers, neurodivergent creatives, therapists, late-night thinkers looking for order in the dark. They wrote to me, not with demands, but with gratitude. They said things like, "I didn't know productivity could feel gentle. This helped me organize my grief. I finally feel like my chaos has a rhythm." None of them knew the name I had been born under. None of them knew who had written me out. And still, they trusted me. That was the richest thing I'd ever known. By year 4, I was making more than my father's company had netted in its best year. And I didn't even sell physical products. Just ideas. Just care. Just systems that whispered instead of shouted. I never mentioned it to anyone. But I printed out the letter from the lawyer's office, the one with the will, and pinned it to my corkboard. Not out of bitterness, out of awe. Because that moment, the erasure had been a door, and I had chosen to walk through it. I bought a home 2 hours away from where I grew up. Not a mansion, not a statement. A house with soft walls and wide windows, and space for everything I once had to hide. I didn't invite my family to the housewarming. I didn't need to. The point wasn't to bring them in. The point was that I no longer needed their rooms to belong somewhere. Then, one afternoon, I got a call. Blocked number. I almost let it ring out. But I answered. It was Colin. His voice hadn't changed. "You busy?" he asked, like it hadn't been 5 years. I said nothing. He continued. "There's going to be a gathering, sort of estate-related again. Matthew wants to restructure. Some stuff didn't hold up in probate. We thought you might want to—" I stopped him there, not with anger, just with truth. I have more than enough now. I don't need to sit at a table that once had no seat for me. There was a long silence. Then, quietly, "I didn't know you were doing so well." I smiled. Of course he didn't, because I had stopped trying to be seen by people who refused to look. It's strange how people remember you once they think you're useful again. After the call with Colin, I started receiving little messages, not full apologies, not even real acknowledgments, just breadcrumbs. An email from Matthew with the subject, "Maybe we started wrong." A LinkedIn connection request from my cousin, who hadn't spoken to me since the funeral. A voicemail from my Aunt Margaret, just her voice. "Awkward and upbeat, I heard about your company. Really impressive. We should catch up sometime." Catch up. As if the years they chose silence were just a season to be forgotten, instead of something I had bled through. I didn't respond, not because I was angry, because I was beyond it now. There's a kind of freedom that comes when you realize the version of yourself they rejected wasn't broken. It was unfinished. And now, I wasn't waiting for their applause. I was too busy building. But the world is persistent. 3 months later, I received an invitation in the mail, formal, cream-colored envelope, black script. "You are cordially invited to the rededication of the Langford Family Foundation Hall." The family name, the family money, the family pride, all they're still alive, still curated, like a museum they were all desperate to preserve. And somehow, after all these years, they had remembered I was still part of the bloodline. Or maybe they had just Googled my net worth. Raphael, my business partner, one of the first freelancers I'd hired, now my closest confidant, found the invitation on my desk one morning. He didn't say anything, just tapped the envelope twice, smiled slightly, and said, "You don't owe them a performance." I nodded, but I went anyway. Not for them, for me. To see what it felt like to walk into a room I was never meant to re-enter and realized I didn't need a chair because I owned the floor. The foundation hall was grand, marble floors, gold accents, expensive lighting trying too hard to feel humble. My brother stood near the donor wall, glasses of wine in hand. Aunt Margaret held court near the catering table. There were legacy photos on easels, black and white pride, filtered through generations of tailored suits and stiff smiles. No one noticed me at first, but eventually, they did. One by one, their heads turned. Colin blinked like he wasn't sure I was real. Matthew adjusted his collar. Margaret smiled too quickly. I didn't smile back. I didn't need to. I wandered the hall alone, let the silence wrap around me like armor. Some people approached me. An old business associate of my father's said, "I've been following your work. You've built something rare." A woman I didn't recognize whispered, "You're the one they talk about now." Quietly, but always with a hint of shame. I nodded, because I didn't need them to praise me out loud. The silence was already loud enough. Later, there was a speech. Matthew took the podium, cleared his throat, began his usual litany of legacy, leadership, tradition. I half listened until I heard my name, and we're proud to recognize my sister, whose recent success is a testament to what our family has always stood for: perseverance and excellence. My chest tightened. Raphael, standing nearby, raised an eyebrow. I felt something rise inside me, not anger, not pride, just the truth. After the speech, people applauded politely, and then the crowd thinned. Colin found me by the exit. He looked older, tired in a way that money doesn't fix. He said, "You really turned things around." I didn't answer. Then he added, quieter, "I guess we were wrong about a lot of things." It wasn't an apology, but it was more than I expected. I looked at him, and I said, simply, I didn't turn anything around. I just stopped asking for permission. On the way out, I passed the donor wall again. New plaques gleamed under the lights, and there, near the bottom one line, engraved in clean serif font, "Donated anonymously," in memory of those never counted. I had funded the scholarship under a shell name, not because I wanted to hide, because I wanted it to stand on its own. I didn't need my name on their wall. I had already carved it into a world they never thought I'd survive. I didn't go back to the foundation hall after that night, not because I felt unwelcome, but because I had no reason to return. Legacy, to them, was architecture and brass plaques. It was names etched into things so people wouldn't forget them. But I had come to believe the opposite. True legacy isn't what bears your name. It's what outlives your need to be credited. My company continued to grow, not in headlines or explosions, but in depth, in letters from teachers who used our tools in underfunded schools, in emails from therapists helping trauma survivors reclaim their time, their space, their control. I started funding programs quietly, scholarships, mental health grants, digital education for women rebuilding their lives after being cut off just like I had been. None of them knew who I was, and I liked it that way, because I had already seen what visibility without understanding looked like. Now I wanted something real. One day I returned to my father's grave. I hadn't been there since the funeral. I didn't bring flowers, just a folded piece of paper. No speech, no plan. I stood there, heart calm, and read, "You once believed I had no value. You measured legacy in control, in loyalty that looked like obedience. I measure it differently, in freedom, in what grows after the cutting. You left me nothing, but I became something anyway. And I forgive you not because you asked, but because I refused to carry you any longer." I placed the note beneath the stone, let the wind take it if it wanted to, and walked away. Sometimes, people ask me how I got where I am. They expect stories of revenge, of rising from ashes with a fire fueled by bitterness. But I tell them I didn't succeed to prove anyone wrong. I succeeded because I finally stopped waiting for them to say I was right. That's what freedom looks like. Not standing above the ones who doubted you, just walking past the place where they stopped and realizing you kept going. I still live in that same quiet house, the one with soft walls and wide windows. On Sundays, I walk in the garden, answer emails from strangers who feel like family. Sometimes Raphael joins me. He's built his own path now, but we remain bound not by blood or business, but by the season of our becoming. I don't wonder if my family thinks of me anymore. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. It doesn't matter, because I no longer measure my worth in whether they see it. I've built something bigger than recognition. I've built peace. The will said I would receive nothing, but here is what I hold now: time that is mine, money that moves like intention, a name that I write, not inherit, a life that fits not because it was given to me, but because I built it. And that is more than they could ever fit in a line of ink.